We're going to get ready for the Word of God. And I've got the privilege of introducing Mark this morning. I might slip into calling him Sparky occasionally, because when you've known someone for 3 years, you realise they have a nickname, and our whole coaching group have referred to him as Sparky many times. But Mark, Sparky, however you want to refer to him, it's just been an incredible privilege on my Ministers in Training journey. As most of you know, we're part of a bigger organisation called Assemblies of God, and we're part of a big family in Assemblies of God. So whilst we're here in Newbridge, in the valleys of South Wales, there are churches all around us that are also part of Assemblies of God, and beyond that within Wales, beyond that within the UK, and right across the world. And I've had the privilege over the past 3 years of doing my Ministers in Training course, which I know I've spoken to you about at different points, but on the very first day when you go to your orientation day, and you're sitting there and you're feeling very nervous to begin with, because you're in a room full of other leaders, you don't really know anyone, and then they put you into these coaching groups, and you're thinking, oh, this is interesting. I wonder who I'm going to be with, and you've got this kind of like nervous anticipation. Well, I have to say, and I'm not just saying this, but I definitely have the best coach. And we've got what we call our C25 Dream Team. We graduate together this year, but Mark, what he represents, not just in ministry, but just in his character and in who he is, has rubbed off on us all within his group, but has had such an impact on us that we'll have sessions, and then we kind of sit in these groups, and we're all trying to like work out, whoa, what have we just heard? And the way he will draw out questions, challenges, encouragement, but with such a pastoral heart, is an incredible gift. And I've really reaped the benefit of that. And I'm really thankful to God for all that he's imparted into me. But I know this morning, be ready, because he's going to impart something incredible into you. So can I just give a warm welcome to Mark?
That is really kind. One of the things that Hannah has to do for her Ministers in Training is she has to go away for 4 weekends a year and endure my company. But one of the other things she has to do essays and assignments, and one thing called ministry reflections, where she sits back and writes about what ministry she's been involved in. And it's one of the most humbling experiences for me to read those. I don't grade them. I don't give her an A+ or a B- or anything like that. But it's to be able to see what a minister does. And I just wanted to encourage you and remind you, if that's okay, you have got a pastor who is a real pastor. Somebody who smells of sheep, because they hang out with the congregation that she's been given, that her and Gareth have been entrusted to look after, because her ministry reflections are full of you. It's like I've turned up and I've had a picture painted and it's in black and white, but now, today, I get to colour it in. I get to meet names. She doesn't tell tales on you, don't worry. But the things that you have gone through, that and it's just an absolute thrill and an honour to be here. But Gareth and Hannah are just so kind, so generous, and so thoughtful, that even when, and I know it's real, because the same things she does here, I see when she does for other people as leaders in that setting. So I joked the other day with her, oh, you're the proper pastor in our group, because she got the engagement card for the other person who'd got engaged in our group. Not me. I'm supposed to be the leader. And I'm like, yeah, thankfully you're here. But they're just genuine, authentic, brilliant people. And as soon as I came in here, I just felt this spirit of authenticity in the room from everybody here. There's just a realness, an honesty of your pursuit for God that is it's going to change Newbridge. Amen. It's going to make an effect in the valleys because of it's just this wholesomeness, no deceit. You are what you are. You're incredible people. And if I can share some stuff today that helps release the God that is in you, that he's put inside you, the gift, the talents, the skills inside you, then I'm going to walk away a really, really happy person. So are we up for a little journey today? Yeah. Amazing, cool. So I apologise about my accent. I have lived in Manchester for 20 years, but I am Scottish born and bred. So sometimes you'll hear a word and you'll be like, where did that come from? That's definitely a Scottish word. And other times you'll be thinking, what, are you Peter Kay in disguise? No, I'm not. So I'll tell you about my wife, Michelle, and our story later, but what I wanted to talk today about, which I think is really apt, is the power of prayer. Is that okay? So if you're taking notes, you can write that down. A couple of weeks ago, we had a family day. Now, my wife is one of 6, and they're all married, and most of them have kids. Thankfully, the one with 4 lives in America. And Michelle's mum and dad live in a 2-up, 2-down in Bolton. It's not the biggest house in the world, obviously, but it's tradition. That's where we go for family fun days. And it was manic. Everybody's trying to play board games. There's proper Christian like buffet going on, quiche, upside down egg sandwiches, some weak squash. It's just absolutely perfect. And there's kids climbing over the place. You can't play Monopoly because, there's something kicking off in the other room. It was brilliant. But as I was in that manic atmosphere, I remembered the family fun day we had in September. And Michelle's mum and dad had decided we'll all go to the beach in September. Well, I mean, you're not guaranteed the weather at the best of times, but in September I'm thinking this is a bad idea. But we all trail off like the Clampets in various cars and arrive at a public car park place and clamber out, and then we're running around on the beach. And then Michelle's mum says, let's go to the pier. And I'm like, no, let's not go to the pier. I do not want to go to the pier because I know what's at the pier. Number one, there's ice cream everywhere, there's cookies everywhere, there's chips everywhere, and there's the arcades. And my kids love the arcades. And I'm thinking, this is going to cost me a fortune. And I'm walking because I'm a good dad and I'm not moaning, I'm not complaining, but there's that internal dialogue as a parent that you're going on. They're going to be smacked up on sugar, and they're going to be either happy or sad because they've not won what they really wanted on, Chock-a-Duck or whatever, putting 2p's in the slot machine and for that little plastic thing that you could buy in Home Bargains for £1, but they're determined to put £5 worth of 2p's in to get that £1 or that. They've got so many tokens, and Sam, my boy, he's 11, he went to the shop thing and exchanged his tokens and came out with tat. He'd got like 2,000 tokens, which cost me a £5, his gran a £5, and his £5 pocket money for the month. £15 has gone in these things, and I'm looking at it going, that wouldn't even sell in Home Bargains. What is going on here? But it was amazing to see them. They were just taking these 2p's and slotting them in and thinking, if I put enough 2p's in here, I am going to win that thing. And they're not addicted, they're not gamblers or anything, it's just fun and games. So we can all just chill out. But they're there, intense, with a formula in their head. If I do, then this will happen. If I pray, then God will do this. I'd like to suggest that sometimes some of our prayer life and our relationship with prayer is no different to, I'll chuck the 2p in, I'll say a little prayer, and what I want will come out. And I'd just like to kind of say that I don't know that's actually what prayer's like. I don't think that's what it's like. I think we underestimate it, or we under-expect or underplay the power of prayer. Some of us might be confused. Some of us have seen incredible prayers answered, and some of us have seen prayers not answered. And we're maybe living with some disappointment. Some of us are shy to pray. Some of us love prayer. Some of us don't understand it, and like my wife, they're absolutely enthused by it and think it's the best thing, okay. Everybody's got a relationship with prayer. And I just want to challenge some of that today, if that's okay with you. I just want to try and help you out. You've been going through Joseph, and I would love to sit and ask him, what did you pray when you were in the pit? What did that conversation look like? And what did the conversation look like with God afterwards when you got out? What did you What was the prayer life like when you were in Potiphar's house and you realized this temptress of another man's wife was coming at you? What? I think it was just, help, get me out. What was your prayer life like in the prison when you were there for years and then you thought there was a way out because you were prophesying and those people were talking up for you and then they did the dirty on you? And you saw this, what you thought there was the way out, and that was the answer, and it didn't go to plan. And what was his prayer like when he was in the palace? When he had to lead an entire nation and be the prime minister and deal with... And what was his prayer like when his brothers turned up? And what was his prayer like afterwards when he realized God had concocted and masterminded this beautiful picture to save people's lives? I often wonder what your prayers are like when you're praying for revive, or what the congregation's prayer are like in Audacious. We all have ideas of prayer, and I just want to really quickly go through some stuff that from the Bible and just go, I hope this helps. So Matthew 6, verse 5, if you've got your Bible with you, I'm going to read it from the Message version, which is, it helps me understand. What I'm challenging myself to do just now is take one Bible verse a week. So I'm on 1 John 4. And every single day read it in a different translation. Because all of us have paradigms and perceptions of certain words. And sometimes we'll read a word in one translation and think X. But then you read it how it's written in another one and suddenly you've opened the door and God can speak. Because what a word meant to you was not what the word was meant to say. But God's so powerful. So just when you read something in something different, it sometimes can impact you. And it says this, Matthew 6, verse 5. When you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in their synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. This then is how you should pray. And this is Jesus talking. So we could break all of this down and go, okay, there's some clear instructions on how I should pray. But I think the thing that I find really interesting is when he says, when you pray, go to your room, close the door, and pray to your Father. It's one thing being in the prayer meeting and praying for everything. That's one type of prayer. But when you're praying just you and God, how are you doing it? I don't think it means, if we take it word for word, go into a room, close the door, and pray. What God's highlighting is, it's just you and him. It's just you and him. In Luke 5, verse 16, it says this, Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. It's the concept of it just being you and him. Just you and your Father. Talking to him. Hanging out with him. In the mornings, I have my little place in our bedroom where I sit and I have a 4-year-old daughter who's an absolute miracle. She's called Anna. Your little picture comes up in a minute. She's absolutely crazy. Absolutely brilliant. This was us on Thursday walking into church because she was off sick. Looks really sick, doesn't she? It's the first thing she does in the morning is get up, come into our bedroom, and find us. And it's usually me, because that's where I like to pray. And she, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just hanging out with Jesus. Oh, okay. What's he saying? From the mouth of a child, I'm like, wow. I've not told her I'm reading my Bible. I'm not telling her I'm doing my declarations. I'm not telling her where I'm up to. I'm not telling her the encyclopedia that's helping me or the Google thing. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm just hanging out with Jesus. I'm just there. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I'm silent. Sometimes I'm chatty. Sometimes I hear lots from him. Sometimes I hear silence. I'm just hanging out with him. And this is what it says in Matthew 6, verse 5. It simply says, just be there as simply and as honestly as you can manage. And I would just wanted to say, how much pretense is that, or religion, or tradition in how you're hanging out with Jesus? I would encourage you just to be there as simply and honestly as you can. It says this about, I'm going to use a word for you, it's called communion. And this is what I mean. Immediately, most of us here, if you've been part of church, are now thinking about bread, fake wine, silence, and reverence. But communion doesn't just mean that. Communion means this: the sharing or exchanging of intimate thoughts and feelings, especially on a mental or spiritual level. So when I'm hanging out with Jesus, I'm asking the question, am I actually having communion with him? Am I sharing, exchanging intimate thoughts and feelings? Or am I just going through a list of things I think I need to pray about? Communion means this. It originates from the Latin word communio, which means sharing or participation. See, I think that when I'm hanging out with Jesus, there is an opportunity for me, yes, to tell him stuff, but for him to tell me stuff. The interesting thing is when I tell him stuff about me, he tells me stuff about me back. He tells me where I'm up to. He tells me my thoughts. So if I'm going in thinking I'm not very good and everything's a nightmare and everything's bad and I'm this and I'm that, and he's telling me, turning around going, you're my son, who I'm well pleased with. It doesn't matter what those people said. I love you. I'm going in thinking, I can't do that, what's ahead of me. And he's standing up in heaven going, yes, you can. I've put everything you need for life and godliness inside you. He's telling me from Psalm 23 that I'm your shepherd and you lack nothing. Yet I'm sitting there going, I can't do this, God. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to do with my son. I don't know what to do in this situation. And he's telling me exactly who I am and encouraging me. And he's going to do that for you because it's a two-way process. You're stronger than you think you are. Jeremy is testimony to that. See, when my wife, when we had our first child, Sam, I've not got a picture of him because he's in that awkward, the face doesn't fit the shape of your head type look right now as an 11-year-old. You know, his feet are massive. See, everyone's laughing because you know. And he's a bit like, don't take any photos of me right now, Dad. I've only got 5 teeth. That kind of thing. They've fallen out at an unbelievable rate. And he was born, and it was quite a traumatic birth. And then a year after, there was loads and loads of tests, and they said to us, after about a year, we know what's wrong now. And they said, well, you have got a condition called aplastic anemia. It's very rare. Very, very rare. And the doctor said, don't Google it. And it was something she said, and I went, okay, cool, I won't. A lot of the other stuff, I didn't. And I never Googled it, I never looked at it. But by that time, Michelle was transfusion dependent for life. She was in and out of the hospital 3 times a week getting transfusions of blood and platelets. And they had to be special platelets. Platelets, the thing in your blood that stops it, that helps it clot. So if she'd got a cut, she would have been in big trouble. And they told us what was up, and they said, well, so what you have now, we're going to have to give you a bone marrow transplant. And we're like, okay, cool. I'm very, quite light about it right now, but obviously at the time, there was lots and lots of, what does that mean? How is this going to impact? Life was crazy anyway, because hospital 3 times a week, sometimes 4, ambulance calls when she would just faint for there was a reason, but you couldn't predict it. And we sat there and I made that promise to myself. I said, okay, I'll never Google it, never look at it. I didn't even know at that point in time that being transfusion dependent has a shelf life. I only found that out afterwards, that there's a certain point that the other people's blood just clogs your system up and that's it. So I didn't know it was, and they said it was critical, but we didn't know it was life-threatening in that sense. And we sat down before she had her transplant, which was amazing. She has 5 brothers and sisters, thanks for her mum and dad being quite amorous. And one of them was a an exact match, but it was the last one who got tested. So she got this bone marrow transplant, and that was incredible. And we had this meeting beforehand, and they tell you everything that can go wrong. They give you all the percentages, and the doctor sat there and told us that you will lose your hair, that you will be very sick, that you must be in isolation for 3 months, that you must, the chance of having children for that is negligible. And we sat there and we heard these words spoken over our situation. And, well, you saw Anna. She never lost her hair. She was out within 6 weeks. She never got sick. They would come in every day because you're going to get sick now because of the chemo on the never once. Because God stood true to his word. We got people coming to us and nervously saying, I believe God has said to me, you will not lose your hair. And we're okay. We're going to take that. 3 years, so we've just celebrated in September 10 years since she got the all clear. In year we had 3 miscarriages while we were still trying for have a baby, and we were at a conference in London. In the back, nobody knew us. It wasn't an AOG thing. We were just sitting on the back row, and a lady in a Holy Spirit time, really quiet, it was not like an Assemblies of God meeting. Just Nicky Gumbel had stood up at the front and went, hello, right now the Holy Spirit's here. So if you get a word of knowledge, go for it. If you feel like praying for someone, pray for them. And there's just outbreaks of the Spirit all over the place. And all of a sudden, this lady just turns around, doesn't know us, looked at him and went, you are going to have another baby, you know. Hope that's okay. And walks off. She didn't know us. But God had deposited that in Michelle's heart. And that is what gave us the strength, the courage, the perspective, the clarity to keep going through what we went through. Our story is really different. It's really different, the outcome of how it happened. But it's the same God. And I'd like to just leave you, put this out to you, that it's really easy to put faith in a picture, but really we have to have our faith in the painter. It's really easy to put faith in the provision, but we have to have our faith in the provider. So how it went for me doesn't mean it had to go the same way as it went for Jeremy. How my story has unfolded doesn't mean God must do it this way. 2p in, answer out. 2p in, answer out. No. It's up to God how he wants to paint. And I'm still unfolding now. Today will be another little jigsaw piece or another colour in the painting that God has created so many years ago. He knew that was going to happen. And 3 years ago, he places me, Hannah, in our life so that a day like this can happen. I mean, I'm not a very emotional person, but I've not stopped crying all day. But what I want to say is, in your times of communion, that's what gives you the power that Jeremy says, to stand up here and say, I had peace. Yeah. How? When the doctors are shouting X, when circumstance is shouting Y, yet all you heard was a whisper. All you heard was a whisper. Will you value the whisper louder than you value the shout? Because where it's coming from is from the painter. Where it's coming from is the provider. Where it's coming from is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, who in Matthew 8 healed a leper. In Matthew 5 heals a centurion's service. In Matthew 8 heals many from the challenges of the norm. In 8:23-27 he heals us, he calms a storm. In 8:28 he sets a man free from demons. In your communion you get the power to handle what he's asked you to go through. It's useless asking, I think, for the power that you need for Wednesday on Wednesday morning. What you've got to build up is a consistency of communion, a consistency that says, I can go through this. It comes from that. It says this in James 5. Is anybody in trouble? Let them pray. Is anybody happy? Let them sing songs. Is anyone sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they've sinned, they will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to each other. Elijah was a human being, even as we are. He prayed earnestly it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. Again he prayed, and the heavens gave rain, and the earth produced its crops. Elijah is a man just like us. What did he do? He understood the power of what happened in communion with his king. Abraham interceded for a city. It changed. Jacob wrestled and was transformed. Moses prayed for a nation and changed God's intention. Prayer can change way more in a lifetime, in one moment, than we can in a lifetime. I was a youth pastor for probably 8 years. Best job I've ever had, apart from being a greenkeeper on a golf course. And I went to a youth camp, and I'm older, but I'm playing football, and I shouldn't have been. And the kids are running rings around me, and I went up for a header, and I rose like a salmon, and I crumpled like a frog. And when I went down, I went over on my left, and on my right ankle, I went over one way, and I felt it spring back and go the other way. I'm in agony. I'm lying on the floor. There's no drama. I'm in bits. And the other youth leaders helped me to the side of the AstroTurf, and we should go to hospital. Okay, let's go to hospital. So I'm in Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, and the doctor, after like 4 hours, comes and sees me and looks at everything and then goes, I've got some good news and some bad news. Okay, great. Give it to me then. And he said, the good news is you haven't broken your ankle. The bad news is you've done your ligaments. If you'd have broken your ankle, I could have done something. I could have put it in a cast. But it's just your ligaments, so you've just got to let it heal. I'm like, okay. What does that mean? Well, he says, you've got to do plenty rest, ice it, compress it, and elevate it. Okay, great. How long will I be able to play golf or football again? Golf and football was my life. I had no girlfriend at that time. It was youth sport, golf, football. That was it. And he says to me, golf, 3 months. Football? Knowing that he's not going to say any closer than 3 months. Yeah, that'd be about 6. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, don't do anything. I'm like, no way. This is my life. It's all I did. Okay. Went back to that youth camp and told everybody what's going on. At the end of the service, 3 lads came to me. They're young. They're like 11 years old. And they're like, okay, we're going to pray for you. I'm like, okay, cool. Great. All I can hear in my head is 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 3 months. I'm like, I'm going to get fat. 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 3 months. And they're praying. And I just had this moment. I'm like, okay, no. Let's believe. I played golf the next day and football 3 days later. Because the power of God fell in that moment. And that ankle, which was busted, was completely healed. The bruising was there, but there was no pain. And I was able to play football. They were just kids. Just kids. But they believed. And that's what happens in communion with Jesus, is that we can get the power we need for the day. The next thing that happens is, in your communion, if you look at Luke 6:12, it says this: one of those days Jesus went out on a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When the morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, and he designated them apostles. So he goes on his own to Jesus and hangs out with God and says, hey, I don't know what to do next. I've got 72 followers. You've asked me to change the world. What's going on? And God downloads a plan to him. gives him clarity of the next steps. He comes down off the mountain and he goes, you, let's go. You're now the 12. You are the apostles. They've changed history. In that moment, he gave clarity. It's no different for you or I. I don't know what's going on in your life. I cycle to work most days, apart from when I've got my daughter, because you can't cycle with a daughter on your shoulders. That's dangerous. But I did it it takes maybe 30 minutes, and I don't listen to podcasts, and I don't listen to the radio on the way there. I don't listen to music. I'm cycling in and out of cars, but it's just me and Jesus. And the amount of times he has given me a thought, a direction, a piece of clarity, simply there because I'm saying, God, I don't know what to do today. I don't know how I'm going to handle this situation. I've got to meet X, I've got to meet Y. I'm in a meeting with a businessman and he's got power and I've got you. And he tells me a word and I get a word of knowledge or something. But that's the same for you. Will you find your place where you can commune and hear that whisper? Hear that nudge? Because he's so good and so faithful. And the next thing you get when you're communing with Jesus is this. We're going to read Matthew 12:36. I'm going to not read it. What happens is Jesus is about to go to the cross. So he takes his disciples. He's in a place called the Garden of Gethsemane. And he asks them, will you come with me and pray, please? Will you pray? But they don't. But he goes and prays, and he's asking God, hey, I don't know how to do this. I don't really want to do your will. I'm not sure why you've given me this thing to do. Can you take it away? Do I not have to do it, please? And then he stops and he goes and he's like, Peter, John, Simon, are you not praying? And they're like, no, we fell asleep. And then he goes back again and he asks the same sort of things of God. And he's like, your will, not my will. And then he comes out and he meets them and again and he's like, okay, you didn't pray, it's cool, let's go. And as he goes out of the Garden of Gethsemane, there's a group of people come towards him, including somebody who's just betrayed him, who's let him down, who's disappointed him, who's attacked him, who's stabbing him in the back, and a load of soldiers. And I want you to see the two different ways that they react. The disciples who had not been in communion, who had no idea what's going on, looked at this situation and pulled out a sword and sliced somebody's ear off and can't believe what's going on. And it's a very natural response. But Jesus, because he's been in communion with the Father, understands exactly what's going on. We had a natural response, and now we have a supernatural response. He walks through the situation with calmness. He decides to heal the ear and go through it. He walked through that situation. And I often think that when we're sitting with Jesus, he gives us perspective. Chaotic response, calm response. Crazy response, kind response. I would like to just challenge us that when we are going through something, as we all do, that our communion gives us perspective and understanding of what's happening, and gives us strategies of what to do in that situation. As I was praying, I felt that there was somebody here who has or will have something wrong with the liver. And God's literally saying, this is a valley of the shadow of death. It looks like it's bad, but it only looks like it's bad. You will go through this. There's somebody who's got a family dispute going on, the exact word, dispute. That it's a wrangle, it's financial, and God's saying it's not going to be the end. It's a valley of the shadow of death. Shadow. It looks like nobody's scared of a shadow on the wall of a sword. You're scared of the sword. It looks similar, and when there's no light and you're not quite focused and everything, But this is just a shadow. It's not going to be the end of you. It's not going to take you out. It's just a shadow. I'm going to close now, and if the band can come, what I'm going to do, I'd love us just to create a moment of just calm. A moment where you can listen to God. To hear for that silent whisper that just drops something, a strategy, a name, a voice into you. You see, when you simply, the verse in the message 6 verse 6 says this: this is your Father you're dealing with. He knows what you need. With a God like this loving you, you can pray very simply. He knows what you need. When my kids are just watching TV and we're just sitting there and they're not asking for nothing, they're just lolling on me, and you're just there. If you've not got kids, it's an amazing moment. But when I'm just there with them, I'm often looking and seeing what I think they need. They've not asked, because they ask for what they want. But I know what they need. Sam asks me, can I move school because my friends don't like me? And I'm like, you don't need to leave school. You need to grow up in your heart. Because that problem never goes away. It just is a bit more adult. When Anna's there and she says, I need Paw Patrol toys, I want Paw Patrol toys, I want to watch Bluey again and again and again. And I'm like, you need not to watch TV anymore. I want cereal, I want sweets. You don't need any more sweets. And some of us, I think, have got into a childlike mode of saying, I want this, God. And he's in heaven going, I hear you want, but I know what you need. And I just would love it if we just sang that song, the last one that we did again, and just sat in his presence and said, what is it that you're whispering to me, Jesus? What is it you're speaking to me about? Because imagine if we all stepped up in our communion with God and we operated on earth like it is in heaven, with his gifts, with his power, with his insight, with his knowledge, with his wisdom. That's when we can change Newbridge. That's when we can change the valleys, because we are operating like how we should do. There's a hotel in America, a branch of hotels worldwide called the Ritz-Carlton. And every single employee, from bellboy to receptionist to managing director, has one mandate. And they are completely empowered to fix any problem in the hotel that any guest has, up to the sum of $2,500 every day, every customer. So the lowest of the low employee, here's a gripe, here's something up, can fix that problem. It's not, he doesn't turn and go back to the managing director and said, room 157, they're having a bit of an issue. Can you sort it out? No. They're empowered and released to sort everything out. The same for us. Jesus has given us gifts and spiritual sight and spiritual awareness so that we can fix any problem we find. Somebody else tomorrow you meet who's not well, you pray. Don't take it back to Gareth and Leanne, Gareth and Hannah, sorry. You pray. You find some trouble. Be like the guy who's empowered to fix it. You do it. But do it in communion with Jesus. Because he's going to give you the clarity, he's going to give you the power, and he's going to give you the perspective to do it. So we're just going to create this moment of quiet. And just let Jesus speak to you. You might think, I've got faith to pray for somebody. Get up, go and pray for them. You might feel a word of encouragement for somebody. Get up, encourage them. You might feel a bit nervous and just do it afterwards, that's okay. It's just a moment to go, okay, God, what are you up to?